Hello there, welcome to my channel, where we discuss all things games. Today, as previously promised, we tackle creating a no-addon UI in World of Warcraft. We'll start by cleaning up the clutter, dive into the general settings and edit modes, first adjusting camera behavior and how your character acts and handles interactions. From there, we'll build out the action bar for max visibility, reposition frames, using Blizzard's edit mode, and get into combat settings, especially useful if you're tanking or healing. And once we got everything placed just right, we'll test it out and talk about how to track your performance, all without a single add-on. Without further ado, let's dive in. The first thing we want to do is configure our general settings, which we go to Options, Controls, we enable Interact key and set it to a preferred keybind, and to camera following style to never adjust camera. Lastly, we want to go to Accessibility and enable Show Silhouette when obscured. This just makes it easier so our camera doesn't move all over the place all the time. Next, we want to configure our action bars. We go to Controls, Actions Bars, and what I do is I just enable the sixth one, and I'll go into details why when we tackle the combat. Second part of this is we go to Edit mode, and what we want to do is first move all the things that we're not using right now. We put talking head above, and we want to move status bar, and we'll sort these things out later. For now, we want to focus on action bars. All the action bars are sufficient to be 80% of size, at least for this. This is a 4K 32-inch monitor, so scale it the way that you can see it so it doesn't clutter your screen, but you can still see it. Next, what I do is move all these down, reduce it to 80%, all of them, and hide these two. We'll do this for both. There we go. Pet bar, we move to the right here if we need it. Possess bar can stay there, like that. Encounter bar and cast bar are actually like that. Just move it down. There we go. Now, your cast bar will likely depend on your class. You might need it higher or lower depending on how important it is for you. And lastly, we deal with this one. Here, we don't reduce the size. We just put minimum number of icons, and we place it something like this, and we don't show buttons. Next thing is to make these two visible only in combat, since we don't need it. Move this down, just like that. Last but not least, we want to move our unit frames a little bit closer here so that we make it all visible. There we go. And that settles the front part with action bars and start of the unit frames. To continue with the unit frames, we actually want to do one more configuration. Let's set it, save this to no-addon UI. There we go. We want to go back to the controls, and in interface rate frames, we want to display power bars only for healer and display class colors. Let me show you why this is important. So when we configure a party and raid, we want to put raid somewhere where it's visible, but it doesn't clutter our center screen. But we also want to configure a party so that we can easily access to it. For example, with warrior, if I need to intervene in something. someone actually. We want to use our raid style party frames, and we want to make them a little bit larger. There we go. I think this should be fine. And then, as you can see, since you all probably play zoomed out quite a bit, this makes it quite clean. And for extra abilities, I usually put it just above the party. Now that we've configured the base essentials, you can already see how much space you actually have. Now, in order to make all of it work just a little bit smoother, we do want to move this bar to the top right. You can see that it's already switched to the right side, so you don't have to switch it here. But if you do, you can reverse the order of all the icons so that it makes it a little bit easier to access. And you can reduce the eye size and the menu size just a bit. Again, this depends on your resolution, screen size, etc. And we put bags right under it, and we orient it right and reduce the size. There we go. Lastly, we do want to create a little bit more space here so that our objectives are more visible. So we move the boss screen, we move the arena, because these two will never be at one place at the same time, and we move the equipment right there and reduce its size. So you see, everything kind of fits together. The last thing that we want to move is the HUD tooltip, and we want to place it just a little bit higher here so that we make room here for our chat window that will separate. And we save this. For the trade window, I customize it. Here I enable experience, honor, reputation, skill ups, currency, money loot, as well as pings. And this is my trade. And I move it all the way here. I reduce its size and put it right there. And then you can see it works quite well. And we move the other chat window all the way to the bottom. And I reduce font size to 12 as well. So let's move on to combat. Here we can see once I enter the combat, I can see some parts of this, but I don't really see too much information. So in order to tackle that, we go back to options, combat, enable personal resource display, hide health and power bars, friendly buffs, and personal cooldowns. Now, if we go here, we won't see too much of anything, but once we start using our cooldowns, you can see that it actually shows me quite well what I have active. I can track my ignore pain, my shield block, everything quite easily. And it doesn't clutter my screen, it doesn't show my health needlessly, since I have it here. Of course, if you prefer to have your health right there, that's perfectly fine. So now let's configure the cooldown manager. We have our tracked buffs. Now these can actually be useful, and if it's easier for you to track them like this, I do recommend it. You can configure here if you want icon only or name only, and you can increase and decrease the size so it doesn't clutter the screen. I found that this spot is probably the best for you to keep it so that you don't clutter your center screen. And I don't think that tracked buffs are too useful since we already have that information in the personal bar. So the most useful things are essential cooldowns. And this depends on how many you have them for your class. Now, you can configure here how many columns you have and what's the size. I usually reduce it to something like this, and then I place it depending on which class I'm playing and where do I really need them. But this, and we place it visible in combat. But these are the most useful for sure. We don't want utility cooldowns, and we don't want tracked buffs. And I'll leave these for now, but to be honest, you can already track this information. Let's test this out now. So if we go to gameplay enhancements and turn them both on. Now, if I go into combat, you can actually see that it's visible there. And in combination with this, I already have all the information here. It doesn't clutter too much of my screen, and of course I can move it around as needed. Now let's configure this a little bit differently so that we actually have space. Now this bar, you might use it, you might not. Let me explain. What I suggest this bar to be used is for your single button assist. What you would do is you would bind this to here, and then you would place it to be in combat only. So that when you start your combat, you can use it as, for example, if you were used to using things like Heckly or Max DPS or other things, you can still have that similar functionality while not using add-ons and not losing your global cooldown for clicking the actual button. It is kind of a cheat, and it does create a little bit of clutter there. However, not too much. Now, we can improve this based on classes, of course. For example, dealing with the warrior class, we don't need cast bar, so I would lock this to the player frame rather than use it here. So you would have a little bit more space. And again, depending if I'm using a caster or if I just play a class that I really don't need help with, then I would completely remove the single button assist as well. Now let's talk nameplates. Nameplates are the very essential thing in handling combat, especially in Mythic Plus, where there's a huge amount of targets. So what can we do? We go into options, interface, and for nameplates, we choose stacking nameplates. However, as most of you probably know, these nameplates don't really stack that optimally. Now, we can improve that by using a few configuration points. Here I've created two macros that list all the configurations that are available for nameplate customization. And I've configured them such that when you click them both, it reconfigures them slightly. It mimics the behavior of how Plater behaves. It is not perfect, but it helps. Lastly, you can choose whether to have them large nameplates or smaller nameplates. Unfortunately, there's still no configuration for the look and feel of them. However, you can configure your horizontal and vertical scale separately in order to configure them as you want them to look exactly. Now, there is a caveat, which is as you increase the scale of the font of the text above the nameplate will also increase. And there is no way to move the text that I'm aware of. If there is, Blizzard or anyone that knows, please do let me know. I would appreciate that very much. So that concludes our combat essentials configuration. we do have one important topic left, which is performance tracking. How do we actually track our performance without using an add-on like details? Well, it can be done, although it cannot be done real time. So the approach I've used is we go to options and we type in here logging and enable advanced combat logging. This logging creates a file which Warcraft logs can pick up, or you can upload it manually, and then you would be able to see all of the details of your performance in Warcraft logs. Let me show you. So what you would have to do is create your account in Warcraft logs and refresh your Blizzard account data on it so that you can set your characters. Afterwards, you would be able to see your performance live like this. And here you would be able to see for each individual dungeon how your performance was faring and all of your party members, your DPS meters, your interrupts, healing, etc. Of course, this would only be available after the fact, not during the fight. And how do you upload these? Well, actually, there's a very simple way, which is you download their client, and when you log in, you enable live log, and when you want to start logging, you type in combat log. And now the combat is being logged, and your live log will actually be uploaded immediately to Warcraft logs, where it will be available to you or anyone else. It is a little bit fiddly, and it's not a perfect solution, but it is a completely add-on free solution. So this does bring us to the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed. Please subscribe, like, leave a comment, give suggestions to me, to other players, and let's make the best of it. Enjoy.